COVID is something we've all had to get used to over the last year or so, but what happens if you've had the virus, are feeling better and now want to get back to running? Well, we're going to be speaking with experts and the running community who've got first-hand knowledge and experience to share.
Now, it's important to say we are not medical experts, and so the most important person to talk to about your return to running or exercise is your doctor or a medical professional. They can give you advice that's tailored to your individual needs.
So make sure you hit subscribe and tap on that bell icon so you get notified when we upload new videos all about running, which we do every single week.
If you've had COVID and you're thinking of getting back into running, there are a few things that you should think about first. Now, these are general tips and it will depend completely on you. For example, if you had quite severe COVID, you may find it a lot harder to get back into running than someone who experienced milder symptoms. Now, we do recommend that if you were hospitalised with COVID, you should really talk to a doctor before starting running again or any kind of exercise.
Timing is key here, both for your health and the health of others. When did you last start feeling symptoms and when is your isolation period over? Be careful in your approach to the outside world again.
Take note of how you feel. Are you breathless walking up and down the stairs where previously you wouldn't have been? Has COVID had a real impact on your respiratory system? If so, then don't consider jumping straight back into running. There's nothing wrong with trying some walking first and then progressing to walking and running intervals.
If you try to run too hard too soon, you're likely to run into some problems. Giving your body time to recover naturally in the long term will give you much more benefit than if you try to push yourself too hard too quickly. Now, like Kate said at the start, we're not medical professionals here on the Running Channel, but we know people who are. So it's time I hand it over to them to explain this next bit.
COVID and the coronavirus obviously has multi-system effects. They can affect the heart, the lungs, the musculoskeletal system. So there are lots of things to consider when planning a sort of return to activity. Considering those cases that have only had mild symptoms, so that's not people who have been hospitalised or have had significant chest pain. The recommendation is that people should be asymptomatic, so completely without symptoms for at least 7 days before thinking about a return to exercise programme. A recommendation, or you can consider the return in a number of phases. So consider 4 phases. First phase being a return to light aerobic activity. The second phase, return to strength exercises and coordinated drills and strides. Then moving into sustained aerobic activity, so something like a steady run. And then before interval sessions and then tempo running. The progressions through those stages, and actually even what's in each of those stages, will depend on the level of athlete. So if someone's had a short illness and are very well conditioned prior, they may move through those phases relatively quickly, spending a couple of days at least in each phase. So sort of 8 to 10 days before back into something that looks like a regular training program. For other people who are sort of less well conditioned or not used to as much exercise, or have had slightly sustained illness and might have a bit of deconditioning as a result of that, those phases might go over a month, and you may spend a week just doing light aerobic exercise, and that might just be walks in the park. There's a serious condition called myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart muscle, and this is one of the reasons why the very strong recommendation not to exercise whenever you have a fever or with chest pain. Myocarditis can be a very serious condition, needing hospitalization, and can have some longer term consequences. Also, it impacts on the respiratory system. So we know the cough is a common presentation, but also shortness of breath. Coronavirus can impact with scarring on the lungs. It also can increase the risk of clotting after a period of deconditioning. So if we've been ill or spent more time at home in self-isolation and not had that sort of regular daily physical activity, there's an increased risk of injuries to Achilles tendons or hamstring muscles or other muscles if we progress exercise too quickly. That sort of graduated progression is really important. That's sort of the basic principle here, and being attentive to your recovery. So, keeping a training diary, recording a readiness to train score, out of 10 each day, or a fatigue score out of 10 each day can be important to chart how your body's dealing with that return to exercise. Choosing to perhaps avoid some of the really prolonged endurance exercise, keeping exercise duration less than an hour. And then really important to consider things other than your running that impact on your immune system. So most importantly, sleep, really important impact on recovery and the immune system. Diet's obviously important, and people can sort of focus on the sort of supplements that you need to take, but actually the most important dietary intervention, making sure that you have enough calorie intake to match your increased training needs. Returning to exercise and being under fueled has a massive negative impact on ability to recover and your immune system. Maintaining your hydration levels important. Hydration and sort of regular warm drinks actually help with salivary flow, which is a really important part of our immune system. And dehydration is a big risk for clotting. So if you've got some personal risk of blood clots in the past, coronavirus does increase your risk. Being on the oral contraceptive pill increases your risk there. So, hydration is kind of one of those easy things to make sure you're well on top of.
So that's what the science says. But whilst we can give general information and our expert friends can give advice, everyone is different and everyone will have a different experience of returning to running from COVID. But don't take my word for it. Here are some experiences from our running community.
I only started running in May 2020. I got COVID in October and it was pretty bad. I didn't work for about a week and I was just exhausted, headaches and really, really bad muscle aches. So bad I couldn't sit in a chair for about a week. I did get better after that week and the main symptoms wore off, but my fitness was hit pretty hard. I went from running for those months from May to October. I was probably the fittest I'd ever been. And I went from that one day to being unable to walk the dog for about 15 minutes. I recovered slowly over a period of about 6 weeks, and I would now say after those 6 weeks I was completely over it. I am now running the best I've ever run. I've signed up for a marathon.
Hi, I'm Francesca and I've been a runner for about 4 years. Last November I caught COVID-19 and my symptoms included fever, cough and a sense of extreme fatigue. As soon as I was able to go out again, I started taking long walks and then I slowly went back to running. I made sure I took it very easy, and my biggest surprise was that first, I was actually able to run again, which was my biggest concern after reading articles about the permanent effects of COVID on your body. And second, that some of the long-term symptoms like the dizziness and the lack of energy have very quickly disappeared. I am now running consistently, covering 40 to 42k per week, and the more I run, the better and stronger I feel, both physically and mentally. But the craziest thing is that I am now seriously considering running a marathon, which I've never considered doing before. And that will be my next big goal. So take that, COVID-19.
There's been a lot of research on the benefits of vitamin D when it comes to COVID and other respiratory illnesses, although the evidence around this still remains a bit patchy. Increased time spent indoors due to strict lockdowns and shielding has raised concerns that many of us have not been getting the minimum amount of vitamin D required from sunlight.
During autumn and winter, the NHS advises everybody to take vitamin D supplements to keep your bones and muscles healthy and to support your general health. In fact, the NHS in England even set up a service to provide free vitamin D supplements to those who are extremely vulnerable to coronavirus due to lack of sunlight from shielding.
A rapid review of recent studies on the effectiveness of vitamin D that took place as a result of the pandemic has concluded that there still isn't yet enough evidence to support the supplementation of vitamin D to treat or prevent COVID. However, there are now in-depth clinical studies looking closer at the relationship between the two.
Now hopefully that's given you some insight into returning to running after COVID. But have you got any questions that we haven't answered in this video, or perhaps you'd like to share your own experience about coming back after COVID, please leave those things in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe to the running channel, and we'll see you next time.